Welcome to the Book Voices channel. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with our latest book discussions. Now let's dive into today's book.
Ever get that feeling? Like you're stuck at a crossroads with a million paths in front of you, totally unsure which one to take.
Oh, yeah, totally. Analysis paralysis?
Exactly. Or how about those companies, or leaders for that matter, that just have this magnetic pull?
Yeah.
People are drawn to them, they inspire this crazy loyalty. Meanwhile, others just flounder.
It can't seem to get any traction.
Right. So what is that secret sauce? That X factor that makes all the difference?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it really taps into, like, the core of what makes us tick as humans, why we're drawn to certain things, why some ideas just resonate so much more than others.
Well, one of you awesome listeners sent us on this deep dive down the rabbit hole of Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And look, I get it. Cracking open a whole book can be a daunting task.
It's a commitment for sure.
So think of this as your cheat sheet, your spark notes, your super concentrated shot of Sinek's brilliance, hitting all the core principles he lays out in the book.
Exactly. We're not just skimming the surface here. We're going deep, dissecting that powerful start with why concept and exploring how it drives leadership, impacts businesses of all stripes, and even fuels those movements that shape society.
We're trying to unpack the underlying why behind those individuals and organizations that just seem to have this unshakable loyalty, this staying power that so many others crave.
And Sinek, he doesn't mess around with his examples either. He brings up the Wright brothers and their relentless pursuit of flight, the disruptive force that is Apple, the profound impact of Martin Luther King Jr.'s message. It's a pretty epic landscape we're about to explore.
Talk about a powerhouse lineup. All right, let's jump right into the heart of it. Sinek introduces this model he calls the golden circle.
Right, the golden circle. It's super simple, really elegant.
Lay it on us.
Okay, picture 3 concentric circles. The outermost ring is the what a company does, their products, their services, the stuff they put out into the world.
The nuts and bolts, basically.
Every single organization operates in this space. They know their what. You ask them what they do, and they can tell you.
So, like a tech company, they'd say they build software, hardware, that sort of thing.
Yep. A restaurant, they serve food, basic stuff.
It's the obvious surface-level description.
Now move inward to that middle ring, the HW.
Yeah.
This is all about how they do what they do.
Oh, okay.
It's their unique selling proposition, their special recipe, what they think sets them apart from the competition or makes them better, you know.
Their secret sauce.
Some organizations, they can articulate their HW. They'll talk about their innovative processes, their proprietary technology, or maybe their customer service that goes above and beyond.
So this is where a company might highlight their, cutting-edge research and development or their sustainable, ethical sourcing practices, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Or, like you said, their super personalized customer support, the things they believe give them an edge. But here's where things get really juicy. And this is where Sinek's central argument comes into play.
I'm intrigued.
The innermost circle, the bullseye, is the WHY. And this is where Sinek says most companies totally miss the mark. The WHY isn't about profits. That's a byproduct, a result.
It's deeper than that.
Way deeper. The WHY is the purpose, the cause, the belief that fuels the whole operation. It's the reason the organization even exists in the first place. And Sinek's big assertion, the one that underpins everything, is this. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Whoa. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. That's a serious mind shift. It's almost like he's flipping the script on how we traditionally think about business, right?
Totally. And it's fascinating how often you see companies leading with the what or the how, even in their mission statements and their marketing.
Yeah, you're right. It's like they're almost afraid to expose that deeper layer.
It's a disconnect. Take Apple as a classic example. Their what is that they design and sell computers, phones, all that consumer tech stuff. Their how, you could argue, is their sleek design, their user-friendly interfaces, that kind of thing.
That Apple aesthetic that everyone recognizes.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. But their WHY, Sinek argues, is about challenging the status quo. It's about empowering the individual, making technology accessible and simple to use. Their products, the what, they become a tangible expression of that belief. So when you buy an Apple product, you're not just getting a gadget, you're buying into a philosophy, a way of thinking.
It's almost like the device is a byproduct, like you said. What you're really buying is their belief system. I love that.
And even the name change, how they went from Apple Computer Inc. to just Apple Inc. It says something, doesn't
Oh,
it?
yeah. They're not just about computers anymore. They're about something bigger. You're buying into that idea behind the product, not just the features. And it makes you think about those companies that just lead with, we've got the fastest processors, the most storage, blah, blah, blah.
And all specs, all what?
They're hitting you with the technical jargon, but they're not telling you why they even bother making these superpowered machines in the first place.
Or
What's the point? What are they trying to achieve beyond just selling you a product?
exactly. And that's where the disconnect happens. Okay, so we've got this golden circle framework. Now, Sinek says there are two main ways to influence human behavior: manipulation and inspiration.
Manipulation. It sounds kind of, I don't know, a little bit shady, but Cynic isn't necessarily saying it's always a bad thing, right?
No, not inherently. As he defines it, manipulation isn't necessarily about being malicious or having bad intentions.
It's more about the tactic.
Yeah, it's about pushing someone to take a specific action, like buying something, supporting a cause, or agreeing with a certain point of view without actually tapping into that deeper WHY.
Got it.
And he identifies a few common forms of manipulation. One of the big ones is price.
Oh, yeah, we see that everywhere. Buy one, get one free, flash sales, those crazy discounts that make you feel like you're getting a steal. It definitely works to get people spending, but does it really foster loyalty?
Sinek argues that relying too heavily on price often leads to what he calls a race to the bottom. Think about the American car industry. They were all about those cashback incentives for a while. What that created, essentially, was a bunch of cashback junkies. Customers who would only buy a car if there was a massive discount involved.
Wow. Talk about a fickle customer base.
And when companies like General Motors tried to pull back on those incentives, their sales tanked. No special deal, no loyalty to the brand itself. It became purely transactional. And while manipulation can get you those short-term wins, it can backfire in the long run, creating a cynical customer base always on the lookout for the next bargain.
So it's a short-term game with potentially long-term consequences.
You're right. You're not building a real connection, a shared belief. It's conditional. What else do we see out there? Another common manipulation tactic?
Fear. Oh, yeah, fear is a big one.
Think of those ads that play up the potential negative consequences if you don't buy their product or service, like those home security system commercials. Ignoring this could cost you dearly. Or insurance companies emphasizing those worst-case scenarios.
Are you prepared for the unexpected?
Exactly. While fear can be a powerful motivator in the short term, and it definitely has its place in things like public safety campaigns, it doesn't build that deep-rooted loyalty we're talking about.
Right. You're just trying to avoid a negative outcome. You're not really moving towards a shared positive vision. What about appealing to our desires, our ambitions? Sinek calls that aspirations.
You got it. Think of those anti-aging creams promising to shave years off your appearance, or marketing that plays on our desire for status or wealth. Those messages can definitely pique your interest, but the motivation they tap into is often fleeting because it's based on a surface-level desire rather than a core value.
It's not rooted in something deeper, something more meaningful. And then there's the good old power of the crowd, peer pressure.
Oh, yeah. Testimonials, celebrity endorsements, that whole idea that if everyone else is doing it, or if some big shot expert or famous person endorses it, it must be good, right?
4 out of 5 dentists recommend.
There you go. Sinek also brings up the concept of novelty here, like the hype around the Motorola RAZR phone back in the day. It was hugely popular for a hot minute simply because it was sleek, new, different. But that novelty wore off pretty quick, and it didn't translate into lasting brand loyalty. The company mistook a passing trend for true innovation, something that fundamentally changes an industry, and it ultimately led to commoditization.
So all these manipulation tactics, they can get you sales, but they don't necessarily create a tribe of loyal followers. How is the inspiration fundamentally different?
Inspiration, at its heart, is all about connecting with the WHY. When people are genuinely inspired, they act because of a deep personal motivation. They believe in the cause, the purpose behind the action, and as a result, they're often willing to go the extra mile, pay a premium, put up with inconvenience, even make sacrifices because they identify with that cause on a deep level.
Like the Civil Rights Movement, led by Martin Luther King Jr., people risked their safety, faced tremendous hardship, and turned out in droves, often without any formal organization or even incentives, because they were so deeply inspired by the belief in equality and justice.
Exactly. Or think back to the Wright brothers again. They weren't the best funded or the most academically decorated team trying to achieve flight. But they had this infectious passion for aviation, this deep conviction that it could change the world. And they inspired their small team with that belief. Contrast them with someone like Samuel Pierpont Langley. He was in the race to achieve flight too, but his motivation seemed to be more about the prestige, the recognition he thought he'd get if he succeeded.
It was more about ego than a true belief in the transformative power of flight.
Yeah. When the Wright brothers made their breakthrough, Langley basically gave up. His motivation was tied to achieving the first successful flight for personal gain, not the WHY, the deeper purpose of revolutionizing transportation.
And this power of WHY, it's not just a feel-good concept. Sinek argues that it's actually rooted in our biology, in how our brains are wired.
Right, and this is where it gets really fascinating.
So tell me, what's going on in our brains when we connect with a WHY?
Well, Sinek says that communicating the WHY activates a different part of our brain than communicating the what. The WHY speaks directly to the limbic brain.
The limbic brain. Remind me what that does again?
This is the part of the brain responsible for our emotions, for trust, for decision-making. But get this, it doesn't control language.
Interesting. So it's operating on a more subconscious level.
Yeah. It's where those gut feelings come from. That this feels right sensation that you can't always explain logically. That's your limbic brain at work.
So it's driving our choices, but we're not always fully aware of it.
Exactly. Now, the what, the facts, the features, the logical arguments, those are processed by the neocortex.
The neocortex, that's the more rational language processing part of the brain, right?
Exactly. So you've got these two different parts of the brain processing information in different ways. And this explains why we often struggle to articulate the exact reason behind a decision that was driven by a gut feeling. We end up rationalizing it after the fact with logical explanations.
Makes sense. Our subconscious brain is making the call, and our conscious brain is trying to make sense of it afterward. And this has huge implications for marketing, doesn't it?
Huge. It suggests that emotional marketing, when it's genuine and authentic, can be way more persuasive and memorable than just listing features and benefits.
Instead of just focusing on the rational what, you need to connect with those deeper, more emotional drivers, the WHY.
Absolutely. Sinek uses this great example about laundry detergent. For years, marketing for laundry detergent focused on the what. Whiter whites, brighter colors, all that stuff.
That's what market research was telling them people wanted.
Right. Exactly. But then some anthropological studies revealed something really interesting. What people were really buying into was the feeling of taking care of their families. Clean laundry was just a tangible expression of that deeper emotional need.
The whiteness of the clothes was almost secondary to the feeling it represented.
Yeah, it was a proxy for that sense of care and nurturing.
Okay, so having a compelling WHY is crucial, but it can't just be some vague idea floating around.
It needs to be concrete, actionable.
Sinek talks about the importance of clarity, discipline, and consistency. Clarity of WHY is the foundation. You've got to be crystal clear about why you do what you do.
If you can't articulate it clearly, no one else will be able to either.
Exactly. Then comes the discipline of Hey WE. Your core values, your guiding principles, the actions you take every day to bring that WHY to life. And finally, the consistency of what? Everything you say and do, your products, your marketing, your internal culture, it all has to align with that overarching WHY.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. It's about authenticity. When your WHY, your Hey W, and your what are all in sync, you build real trust and foster deep loyalty. Without that alignment, you often see organizations resorting to those short-term manipulative tactics we talked about earlier.
Because they don't have that solid foundation to build upon.
Right. And Sinek brings up Southwest Airlines as a great example of a company that lives its WHY. Their purpose, he argues, is to champion the common person. And this is reflected in their low fares, the what, and their relaxed, customer-centric company culture, the HOW.
They're known for being a bit quirky, a bit unconventional, which makes them even more endearing.
Exactly. It's not just about cheap flights. It's about believing in accessible air travel for everyone. You know that story about Herb Kelleher, the co-founder, showing up to a formal interview with a hole in his sock?
I think I've heard that one.
Another executive pointed it out, and Kelleher just shrugged it off. It wasn't about appearances. It was about substance.
And that down-to-earth attitude, that genuineness, it really resonates with people.
It reflects their values, their WHY, and that trust that you build through clarity, discipline, and consistency, that's what allows you to attract those believers, as Sinek calls them.
The people who are all in, who are truly invested in the mission.
Trust is the bedrock of any lasting success in business or anything else. Great leaders don't just recruit employees or acquire customers, they attract individuals who are a good fit, who share that fundamental belief in the WHY.
They're not just looking for warm bodies. They're looking for kindred spirits.
Think about Shackleton's famous ad for his Antarctic expedition. It basically said, "Men wanted for hazardous journey. Small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success."
That is not your typical job posting. Talk about brutal honesty.
Exactly. Who would sign up for that? Only those who are driven by something far beyond just a paycheck, those who thrived on challenge and believed in the inherent value of the expedition itself. Shackleton assembled a crew whose mindset aligned with his own, and that shared conviction was crucial to their survival.
Wow. It's a powerful example of attracting the right people for the right reasons. Not by promising riches or comfort, but by appealing to something much deeper.
And when employees feel that sense of belonging, like they're part of something bigger than themselves, they're more likely to be engaged, to give their best work, to come up with innovative solutions.
They're not just clocking in and clocking out. They're invested in the success of the mission.
Look at the turnaround of Continental Airlines under Gordon Bethune. He shifted the focus to valuing employees, making them feel respected and appreciated. Instead of just telling them to keep the planes clean for the passengers, he appealed to their own sense of comfort, since they spent so much time on those aircraft.
He understood their perspective.
He even implemented bonuses for on-time performance and made sure they understood why their role was important.
Instead of just demanding results, he was explaining the WHY behind the actions.
It fostered this sense of shared purpose and pride. And think about personal recommendations.
Word-of-mouth marketing. It's still one of the most powerful forms of advertising, isn't it?
Totally. It's because we trust those who share our values. A genuine recommendation from a friend carries way more weight than any slick ad campaign.
It's that authentic human connection that makes all the difference. So how does this all tie into that tipping point, that moment when an idea or product goes from niche to mainstream?
That's a great question. Sinek brings in the law of diffusion of innovations here. Remember that bell curve?
Vaguely.
It illustrates the different stages of adoption. You've got the innovators, the early adopters, the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards.
Oh, right.
And his key insight is that mass market success, hitting that tipping point, usually happens after you've successfully won over the early adopter segment, which is about 15 to 18% of the market.
So the early adopters are crucial. What makes them tick?
These folks, they're not primarily driven by specs or features, the what. They're inspired by the WHY. They tend to make decisions based on intuition, on a gut feeling. They're drawn to the vision, the underlying belief. The early majority, on the other hand, they're more pragmatic. They want to see evidence that the product or idea has already been validated. They're looking for social proof.
They need to see that it's working for others before they jump on board.
Sinek talks about the case of TiVo, which is really instructive. They had a revolutionary product, the what, but they didn't effectively communicate WHY people needed it. They focused on all the cool technical features instead of the core benefit it offered, giving viewers more control over their TV experience. They basically targeted the wrong part of the adoption curve initially, trying to appeal to the mainstream before winning over those crucial early adopters.
So they missed that crucial step of connecting with the people who are driven by the WHY.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with someone like Martin Luther King Jr. His message, his WHY, the fundamental truth that all people are created equal, that resonated so deeply with those early adopters, those who were truly committed to the cause.
The people who were willing to put everything on the line for that belief.
And that's what propelled the movement to critical mass. People followed because they believed what he believed, not just because of the specifics of his plan.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of not just having a WHY, but being able to communicate it effectively.
But it's also crucial to remember that no single person can build a lasting movement or a world-changing company alone. Sinek talks about WHY types and how W types.
Okay, fill me in.
WHY types, so they're visionaries, the big thinkers, the ones with those audacious ideas who believe the impossible is possible. How types, they're the pragmatic doers, the ones with the skills and know how to make the vision a reality.
So you need both the dreamer and the builder.
Exactly. It's about that synergy. Interestingly, Sinek points out that a lot of successful entrepreneurs are actually HOW types. They're really good at building and scaling businesses.
They're the masters of execution.
But the truly game-changing companies, the ones that have that lasting impact, they're typically led by WHY types who have strong HOW types supporting them, making sure the vision gets translated into action.
I think Steve Jobs, the classic WHY type, and Tim Cook, the brilliant HOW type who keeps the Apple machine running smoothly.
Yeah.
It's a killer combo.
Absolutely. And then you've got the organization itself acting as a sort of megaphone, amplifying that core WHY.
Broadcasting it to the world.
But the effectiveness of that megaphone depends on the clarity of the message. Just throwing tons of money at something or doing flashy stunts, that's like turning up the volume without actually saying anything meaningful. It's a clear and consistent WHY that resonates with people.
It's about substance over style.
Sinek gives the example of Ron Bruder and his EFE Foundation. They're focused on creating economic opportunities for young people in the Middle East, which is a really compelling WHY. And they're amplifying that WHY globally through a well-structured and focused organization.
It's not about empty gestures. It's about meaningful action, driven by a powerful purpose. But what happens when that clarity of purpose starts to get muddled? Sinek talks about the split, right? What is that exactly?
The split happens when that initial clarity of the WHY begins to fade. In the early days of a company, decisions are often deeply rooted in that core purpose, driven by the founder's gut feelings and beliefs.
It's all heart, all passion.
But as a company grows, those at the top can get further and further removed from the day-to-day operations, from that direct connection with the market. Decision-making starts to rely more on data, on the what, instead of that original, inspiring WHY. That initial fire can start to dwindle, and the organization can lose sight of that higher calling.
They start chasing numbers instead of their dreams.
Think about a company like AOL. They were a revolutionary force in connecting people, but over time, their WHY seemed to become less clear.
When the WHY gets fuzzy, it's easy to lose your way.
Exactly. So when that happens, companies need to find new ways to measure their success that go beyond just the traditional financial metrics.
It's not just about the bottom line anymore.
You need to actively measure things that reflect your WHY. Christina Harbridge, who runs a debt collection agency, made her WHY about making sure everyone felt heard and understood. She focused on training her staff to listen to debtors, to build rapport, and her company achieved much better results than the industry average. There's also Honore Construction, whose WHY is all about enabling people to spend more quality time with their families. They actually measure work-life balance as a key indicator of their success.
So they're finding ways to quantify the things that really matter to them, the things that align with their WHY.
And by measuring those aspects, they're reinforcing that underlying purpose and keeping it front and center. It's not just lip service, it's baked into their operations.
It's not an afterthought. It's a driving force. And ultimately, Sinek argues that a leader's most important job is to inspire by consistently communicating that core WHY.
Absolutely. A leader's primary responsibility isn't just crunching numbers or managing logistics. It's about reminding people why they're doing what they're doing. Profitability is essential for any organization to survive, of course, but it's not what motivates people to do their best work.
It's not what gets them out of bed in the morning excited to tackle the day.
Right. And when a strong WHY person leaves an organization, think Steve Jobs leaving Apple for a while, or the long-term impact of Sam Walton's vision at Walmart, or Bill Gates stepping back from Microsoft, it can have a big impact if there aren't strong systems in place to safeguard that core purpose. Howard Putnam was such a good fit for Southwest because he embodied their everyman WHY. And look at Costco's success. Sinek says a big part of that is their focus on employees, their internal WHY, which leads to incredible loyalty and powerful word-of-mouth marketing.
So it comes full circle. Treating employees well, aligning with a strong WHY, it all contributes to a thriving business. It's a beautiful thing when it works. But I'm curious, where does that initial powerful WHY even come from?
Sinek suggests that it often comes from reflecting on your own experiences, identifying those moments or events that truly inspired you, those formative experiences that shaped your core beliefs.
It's about looking back to find that spark.
It's about understanding the difference between playing what he calls a finite game, where you're constantly competing against others to win, and an infinite game, where the focus is on continuous improvement, on outdoing your past self, and on leaving your organization or your field better than you found it.
It's about playing the long game, not just chasing short-term victories.
Exactly. I can even look back on my own early attempts at entrepreneurship. I was so focused on the specific services I was offering that I lacked a clear WHY, and that made it incredibly hard to gain traction. I was just trying to sell something, not connect with people on a deeper level.
It's amazing how much clarity comes from understanding your WHY. It really does seem to be that fundamental belief, that driving purpose that fuels action and creates those deep, lasting connections. It's that simple yet profound message that Sinek emphasizes. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's the core of what we've explored today from Start with Why. It's not just a business strategy, it's a fundamental principle for inspiring action, building loyalty, and achieving lasting success.
And it really gets you thinking about the organizations and leaders that you truly admire. What is it about their belief system that resonates with you? Understanding the WHY can provide a ton of clarity, not just for businesses, but for our own personal choices and endeavors too.
Food for thought, for sure. Maybe next time you're facing a choice, big or small, take a moment to ask yourself, what's the WHY here? You might be surprised at the insights that come up. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a blast.
Always a pleasure.
Until next time, keep asking WHY.
Take your